Nervousness is just the stress playing out in a way, begging for release. It wants to be gone. So replace it with your desire for the story to be told. And there is nothing that doesn't have a story to it. Because everything in our lives is a series of events. Everything. Tonight, from when I walked in this room till when I walk out, which will be momentarily, judging from the camera time, is a series of events. There won't be another preview like it. What does it all mean in the big story of life? I don't know. I don't know. I know what my part is. My part of the story is I have the job of telling you about story and of leading up to the punchline of story. That's my part of the story tonight. Now, you all have a part of this story too, because some of you are thinking about dinner, and some of you are wondering when he's going to finish, and some of you are going, I don't know what the hell he's talking about, but you will. You will, because you'll turn around somewhere in your life and you'll see some little argument you have, or you'll see some little interchange that you have, or you'll observe somebody buying something at 7-Eleven you're not even involved with, and you'll see this little tiny story that just happened right there in 7-Eleven, and you'll start to see it as, what if I shot that? And pretty soon that is how you will begin to think about auditions. And it's what you must do, not only to curb your own nervousness, but to make it even barely bearable for the people that have to watch it. Because what they watch is desperation. Unless you come in to tell them that story, they're just watching somebody want something. Not a pretty picture. All right. Are we done?
We're done.
In your life, whether it's big or small, everything just small, have meaning. It doesn't connect up to like the bigger purpose. I mean, yeah, would you not agree?
Well, I mean, I agree in this way. If you allow it to, yes, absolutely. I mean, because somebody could, you know, when you're dead, somebody could go, Nick started here and Nick finished here, and there would be a story. Would it be interesting? Would it be educational? You know what? This is what was amazing about this Anvil movie last night, is it seemed to be about heavy metal, it seemed to be about near success, it seemed to be about concerts that were attended or not attended, it seemed to be about how some people have the luck of being, I mean, there were people from all the big, I can't even remember, Metallica and all those bands, Black Sabbath, all these, the more famous bands, saying about how these guys were their inspiration. And then you think, how is it that these guys got the shit end of the stick? All these other guys who they inspired are rich, living in townhouses in London, and these guys are delivering food to a food bank as their second job so that they can get their guitar out of hock. You know, how does that happen? But all of a sudden, when these little dumb guys' lives are taken out, it's not a story about that at all. It's a story about friendship. It's a story about dreams. It's a story about other people believing in you and loving you. And you know, it's just, you could take the most banal life in the whole world, somebody you think that had done nothing with their life. And if you started looking at those events, you would find meaning. It all means something. It all means something. And every little increment of it, it wouldn't be the story that it is without any little piece. You need another cup of coffee. If that's not in there, you know, it isn't the same story. Now, we all know that a lot of the stuff that is in a story gets edited out before the story is finally put into the form that it is finally going to take. But that's just the edited form. The other story had that thing in it, and it was essential to it. And you are the day you audition, you are showing them that you understand this little piece you have to put in. And without it, it may be something they cut from the script eventually. But today, it has a piece and it has meaning. And that's where the investment is, John.
Actually, going from the philosophical, I have a very technical question, because this is actually very informative for me, especially in my line of work. But I'm wondering, for the actor, how do they do that? They only get like 2 lines. You know, they don't give them that much to go off of. How do you tell a story if you don't know the story?
When John talks about his line of work, John's an attorney. And it's the same thing. You know how there can be one detail in a brief, and it can be a 40-page brief, and if that detail's left out, the whole thing, you know, and that's what you got to think. We all know that these things could be left out, could be edited out, could be lost.
Right.
But when you're just given that one little chunk, you assume that it's crucial. You know, that little thing where, you know, you've all heard that, one of those jokes about, you know, the person who, the joke's always about an elephant. There's always an elephant involved, and somebody says, so what's the circus about? And the guy who's shoveling the shit says, it's about elephant shit, because that's his part of the circus, so he assumes the entire circus is about that. You know, that's what you've got to assume going into an audition. Without my coffee line, there would be no movie. You know, and that because as that script currently stands, it is essential. It is essential for that script as it is, and you've got to treat it like that. They're having auditions. They're asking somebody to read it, so for some reason they think it's worth having people come by and read. So why is it essential? How do you allow it to be, and allow that line to be that? Because you're absolutely right. Out of context, little tiny things, they don't seem to bear, and yet they're there, aren't they? So somehow they have the meaning that comes from you going, this must have meaning. There isn't a right answer. You know, in the law, well, I'm not so sure it's even true there, but it would seem like there are right answers and wrong answers. You know, so, but and yet so often it's a matter of emphasis. You know, it's a matter of what gets brought up. And all of a sudden, these things that it's your investment. The fact that you take that job, that how do I make this a story? If it's a line, how is that by itself a story? Kia, did you have a?
I think you kind of answered it. I was just confirming, like, so as an actor, you get 3 pages of sides and you have maybe like 10 lines. You don't have access to the rest of the script. So is this where your actor skills, like I'm going to make a choice and create a story based on what I have? Like you don't know the context of their story, so you create your own story. And as long as you stay true to that and tell that in the room, then you're being true to the purpose that you went in there to like.
Well, let me give you an example. Suppose you're at a gathering, you know, and there are 2 people sitting on a couch, and they're there most of the evening, you know, having a conversation. You walk up and you hear them saying, I really loved Gone with the Wind. What did you think about it? Well, I loved it too, especially, you know, I've always loved Melanie. She's my favorite. And then you walk away back to get more stuffed olives or whatever, right? That's the thing. Now, they've been sitting there for 3 hours. They've had a whole conversation. They may have fallen in love. If somebody says to you, what was going on over at the couch? What would you say? They were talking about Gone with the Wind. Because that's the piece you know. Now, they could have been breaking up a relationship, they could have been falling in love, they could have been conversing as friends, they could have been movie critics talking about the great movies of all time. You don't know. All you know is that part. So if you know only that part, then what's the story? 2 people talking about Gone with the Wind, one saying that they really liked Melanie. That's a story. That's a story. Right there. So our thought that that it's only a part of a greater thing, well, it's not. It's the little thing that we're working with. You know, like, I'm sure there are things where several partners are working on different aspects of a case, and eventually it's all going to come into being a whole case. But when you're working on the chunk you're working on, that's the chunk you're working on, you know? And how it's going to plug into a larger story, you'll confer about, plug it in later. But right now, what's important? That you get all that piece.
How do you apply the story or get rid of your nervousness and banter in audition? Say you have the whole story for your audition, but then there's some crazy banter and someone says something that you didn't expect, and then how do you apply the story to that part of the audition and not get nervous?
Well, there's a secondary question there. Let me presume this, that the nervousness about the reading you've taken care of by looking at the little piece of the reading and saying, you know, what's the story? I'm telling my job is to get this piece of the story. So I'm not nervous about the reading anymore. But I get real nervous about that time from when I walk in the room and they start going, so how are you today and what's up with you? And, you know, you're supposed to be clever or presentable or whatever. And you're saying that makes me nervous. Okay. So what's the story of that little unit?